The wind on the Wyoming plains did not whistle. It hunted. It scraped across the earth like claws, driving dust into the sky and rattling the frozen ground beneath Mara's torn boots. She pushed forward with her head down, fighting every gust as if it were a living thing, trying to shove her back into the life she had run from. She no longer knew how many days she had been walking. 3, maybe 4. Time had blurred into a haze of pain and cold. Her boots were ruined, the leather thin as paper, each step landing sharp as a nail through her heel. Her blister had burst the day before, leaving a dark stain of dried blood inside the socks she could not afford to change. The bundle in her arms was small, just a few clothes wrapped in a faded shawl that smelled of lye, soap, and smoke. It was all she owned. The plains stretched empty in every direction. To the west, the mountains rose like teeth against a purple sky heavy with snow. The sun was a dim smudge behind thick clouds, giving no warmth. Mara stumbled once, her knee slamming into the frozen ground. A cry clawed at her throat, but she swallowed it. Tears cost water, and she had none to spare. If you stop, the cold takes you, she told herself. She kept walking. Silver Creek, the town she'd left behind, felt like a bad dream. Shallow lights, muddy streets, and whispers that clung to her like smoke. The boarding house she'd stayed in had changed hands, and the new owner had looked her up and down before closing the door on her. "You are not respectable," the woman had said. Respectable. That word had never belonged to Mara. Not since she was 16. She had begged to do chores, to scrub floors, to stay invisible. But the door shut anyway. And so she walked away because standing still meant dying in the cold. Now, as daylight faded into a bruised evening, she saw it, a thin line of smoke rising against the dark sky. Hope stabbed through her fear. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant a roof. Shelter, a chance to breathe for one night. She pushed herself faster, stumbling toward the shape that appeared out of the gloom. A cabin sat on a lonely rise, built of thick, weathered logs. A small corral stood beside it. 2 horses braced against the wind. The place looked rugged, isolated, hard, like the land around it. She climbed the single stone step and lifted her hand. For a moment she hesitated. She knew how she looked, ragged, desperate, alone. She knew what men thought when they saw a woman like her, walking the plains without a horse. But the cold slicing through her bones left her no choice. She knocked. The wind swallowed the sound. She knocked again, harder, the last of her strength bleeding into the movement. The latch clicked. The door opened inward, slow and cautious. A tall man stood in the doorway, blocking the glow of firelight behind him. He wore a heavy coat, a battered hat pulled low, and in one hand rested a Winchester rifle. He didn't speak, he just looked at her. His face told its own story. Hard years, long winters. A scar cutting down from his temple into his beard. His eyes were dark and guarded, revealing nothing. Mara tried to speak, but her throat scraped dry. She swayed, dizzy from the sudden heat drifting out of the cabin. "Help me," she whispered. The man's gaze flicked past her, scanning the empty plains for danger, for anyone who might be using her as bait. Seeing nothing but dust and dying light, he looked back at her. His eyes dropped to her worn shoes, her trembling hands, the blue tint of her lips. A flicker of something, annoyance, maybe pity, crossed his face. He lowered the rifle by an inch. "Come in before you let all the heat out," he said, his voice rough as gravel. She stumbled through the doorway. Her legs buckled, but he caught her elbow, steadying her just long enough for her to sink onto the bench at a wooden table. The cabin smelled of coffee and wood smoke. A cast-iron stove in the corner glowed with comforting heat. Saddles hung from pegs, and a narrow bed sat against the far wall. It was a simple room but warm. So warm that Mara's eyes stung. "Drink slow," the man said, setting a tin cup of water in front of her. She drank too fast, coughing as the cold water shocked her throat, then drank again. He watched her, not unkindly, but with the wariness of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. He ladled thick stew into a bowl and slid it toward her. "Eat." She obeyed. Each mouthful felt like fire spreading through her chest, thawing her from the inside out. Only after she finished did he speak again. "Where'd you walk from?" "Silver Creek," she said softly. "That's 3 days in this weather." She nodded. "You walk alone?" "Yes." "Why?" She looked down at her hands. Her wrists were bruised, yellow, faint reminders of what she'd endured. She chose a half-truth. "They put me out. No money left. Quote." He didn't believe her. She could smell it on the air. But he didn't push. He shifted his weight, wincing slightly, his left leg stiff, carrying an old injury. "I'm Eli Turner," he said. "Mara," she whispered. He studied her another long moment before speaking. "You can sleep here tonight. In the morning I'll give you food and point you toward the stage road." Her stomach twisted. The stage road was 2 days' walk away, 2 days she did not have, not with winter coming hard and her boots falling apart. If she left at dawn, she would not last a mile. She thought of the wind outside, its teeth, its hunger. She thought of Eli's bed, the heat of the stove, the safety she had tasted for just a moment. Fear rose in her chest, bitter and desperate. She could not go back into that cold. He turned away, already making plans to send her off. And Mara realized she had one chance, one thing she could offer. But this time, she did not offer it with shame. She offered it because she thought it was the only way to stay alive. Her voice trembled. "Eli, I am not worth much." She swallowed hard. "But I just need a roof tonight." He froze. Slowly, he turned. The fire cracked once, loud in the silence. His jaw clenched, not with desire, not with hunger, with anger. A deep, aching anger that had nothing to do with her. "You listen to me," Eli said, his voice low and fierce. "You don't buy a roof with your body. Not here. Not with me." Mara stared at him, stunned. He pointed to the bed. "You sleep there. I'll take the floor. That's the end of it." Her eyes burned. She had expected many things. Cruelty, contempt, indifference. She had not expected mercy. And for the first time in years, Mara felt something break open inside her. Something small. Something fragile. Something like hope. Dawn came cold and pale, sliding through the frosted window like a thin blade of light. Mara woke suddenly, her heart pounding, unsure where she was. The quilt over her, the smell of pine and coffee, the quiet. It all felt too safe to be real. Then she remembered. The cabin. The storm. Eli Turner standing between her and the cold. His voice, rough but certain. "You don't buy a roof with your body. Not here. Not with me." Mara sat up slowly. Her body ached with a deep soreness of exhaustion, but the bed had been warm. Warmer than anything she had slept in for years. Across the room, Eli was already out the door. She heard him breaking ice at the water trough, the sharp clang of metal against frozen water echoing across the empty plains. She scrambled out of bed, dressing quickly in the oversized flannel shirt and canvas trousers he had given her. Outside, the wind cut like a knife. Eli stood by the corral, swinging the iron bar hard, breaking ice into chunks. He didn't look at her when she walked up. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. He leaned the bar against the fence and finally lifted his gaze to hers. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes softened by a fraction. "There's coffee on the stove," he said. "Drink some. Then carry 2 buckets from the creek to the house. Fill the wood box. Check the chickens for eggs." He pointed toward the distant fence line. "I'll be riding out. Wind knocked down some rails. I'll be back by midday." He swung himself into the saddle with a stiff, practiced motion. His bad leg made the mount awkward, but he did not complain. Before riding off, he glanced at her one more time. "Don't let the fire die," he said. Then he was gone, swallowed by the cold horizon. Mara stood alone. The wind tugged at her hair, her coat, her breath. She felt small, but under that, she felt something else. Purpose. Eli had given her work, a role, a chance to stay without shame. She went inside, drank the scalding coffee, and stepped back into the cold. The creek was 100 yards behind the cabin. The buckets were heavy, and each trip strained her arms until they trembled. She slipped on the icy bank, soaking her boots and trousers, but she kept going. She filled the wood box. She scattered scratch grain for the chickens and searched for eggs, finding 3 cold but unbroken. By the time Eli returned, the cabin was swept, warm, and smelled of frying pork. He stepped inside, stamping snow from his boots. He looked around the room, then at her. "You got a lot done," he said. She nodded, her hands tight around the spoon she was holding. He ate quickly, silently, yet not unkindly. They spoke only a few words. But something in the room had shifted. A thin thread of trust had begun to form. Not strong, not certain, but present. The days blended into a rhythm. Mara hauling water, chopping wood, sweeping floors, Eli tending cattle, checking fences, repairing gear. They shared meals at the small table, speaking in short, simple exchanges. She watched how he moved, calm, steady, carrying a quiet sadness she couldn't place. He watched her too, though he tried not to. She caught him glancing at her hands, her bruised wrists, the way she flinched at sudden sounds. One night, a week into her stay, she dropped a plate. It shattered across the floor. The sound was sharp, and she froze instantly, shoulders tight, breath locked in her throat, waiting for anger, waiting for the blow. Instead, Eli stood from the table and walked to the corner. He picked up a broom and held it out to her. "Handle first," he said quietly, "so you don't cut yourself." Mara stared at him. You're not angry?" "It's a plate," he said, simply. "I've broken worse." Then he went back to mending a bridle, never raising his voice. It confused her. It scared her a little. Kindness always did. Over the next days, the tension softened. She began to speak a little more. Small things at first. How the wind in Missouri sounded different. How she liked the smell of sagebrush after rain. How she had once dreamed of learning to read properly. Eli listened, not with pity, not with impatience, but with quiet attention. Sometimes he shared things too. His voice was always steady, but there was a shadow behind it when he talked about the war, about the girl he once planned to marry, about the fever that took her while he was away. Pain recognized pain, and something gentle began to grow in the empty space between them. One morning, Eli brought her boots inside. She hadn't noticed he'd taken them. "I fixed the soles," he said, setting them down. "Snow's getting worse. Thin leather'll get you killed out here." Mara picked up the boots. Fresh leather patches had been nailed neatly to the bottoms. He had even oiled them to make them water-resistant. "Thank you," she said softly. He shrugged, avoiding her eyes, just keeping my help on her feet. But she saw the corner of his mouth twitch, almost a smile. As weeks passed, the storms grew harder. Snow piled against the cabin walls, burying the world in white silence. Inside, the stove burned day and night. Mara and Eli fell into a steady closeness, quiet, natural, and frightening in its warmth. Sometimes when she spoke, Eli's eyes softened in a way that made her chest tight. Sometimes when he brushed past her in the small cabin, her heart jumped before she could stop it. But nothing was said. Nothing needed to be said. Until the day he decided they needed to ride into 2 creeks for supplies. Mara's stomach twisted. Going back into a town meant eyes, whispers, judgments she knew too well. "Do I have to go?" she asked quietly. Eli tightened the cinch on the saddle. "I need help loading the wagon," he said. "And you need a proper coat." He said it like a fact, not a favor. They rode into town under a gray sky, the wind whipping dust down the main street. Men outside the saloon went silent as they passed. Women on porches stared openly, whispering behind gloves. Shame flushed Mara's cheeks. She kept her eyes down. Inside the general store, 2 women turned when the bell rang. They looked at Eli, nodded politely. Then they saw Mara. Their faces changed instantly. "Well," one said loudly, "seems Mr. Turner brought company." The other woman snickered. "I suppose a lonely rancher takes what he can get." Mara's heart collapsed inward. She tried to shrink, to disappear. Eli froze with a sack of flour in his hands. Then he turned. Slow, deliberate, dangerous. He walked toward the women. They shrank back. "This lady," Eli said, voice low and steady, "is my hired help. She is a guest in my home. You speak about her with respect, or you don't speak at all." The room went silent. The women paled. Eli turned his back on them, looked at Mara, and said gently, "Pick out a wool coat and gloves." Her eyes burned. No one had ever defended her like that. Not with anger, not with certainty, not with simple dignity. When they stepped outside, Mara felt her heart trembling. "You didn't have to lie for me," she whispered. "I'm not respectable." Eli placed the supplies in the wagon and looked at her, his expression firm. "I didn't lie," he said. "You're worth more than what people think." Mara looked away, but her chest warmed in a way both terrifying and beautiful. She did not know it yet. But danger was already riding toward them, and the past she had tried to outrun was about to find her. The sky over the Wyoming plains was a hard, brilliant blue the morning everything changed. It looked peaceful, almost gentle, but the air carried a tension Mara could feel in her bones. Something was coming, something she could not yet name. Eli spent the early hours repairing tack in the barn while Mara hauled water from the creek. They worked quietly, side by side, each lost in thoughts of the coming weeks. Judge Holloway would be passing through 2 creeks soon. They needed to be ready for anything, especially since the whispers about Mara had not died down. But what neither of them knew was that danger would reach them long before the judge did. That afternoon, as Mara fed the chickens, she heard hooves approaching. She looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun. A single rider came down the road, straight posture, fine coat, flat-brimmed hat. Her breath froze in her chest. She knew that silhouette. Jonas, the man she had escaped, the man who had owned every corner of her fear. The man she had hoped would never find her in this lonely corner of the plains. He reined in the horse and smiled. A slow, cold smile that made her stomach twist. "Well," Jonas drawled, swinging down from his saddle, "you've done well for yourself, Mara." Her voice cracked. "Go away." He stepped closer, smelling of bay rum and cigar smoke. "I heard the stories. The rancher with a broken little stray. Thought I'd come collect what's mine." His hand shot out, grabbing her arm. His fingers dug into the tender flesh above her elbow, the old, familiar grip meant to bruise without breaking. "You owe me," he hissed. "Room and board, lost earnings. You walk away in the middle of the night, you pay the price." "I don't have anything," she whispered. "Then you'll work it off. You belong to me. Until the debt is settled." Quote, Mara tried to pull free, but Jonas tightened his hold. "You'll pack your things. You come back with me," he said, leaning closer. "And if your cowboy interferes, I've got men watching from that ridge who'd love an excuse to put a bullet in him." Mara's heart cracked with terror. She could not let Eli die for her. I'll come," she whispered, choking on the words. "Just don't hurt him." Jonas dropped her arm and tipped his hat smugly. "You meet me in town by sundown. Don't make me come back." He rode off, leaving her shaking, blood pounding in her ears. She ran inside, throwing her few belongings onto the table, trying to pack with trembling hands. She could not let Eli fight Jonas. She could not stay and put him in danger. But before she could leave, the sound of galloping hooves thundered outside. Eli burst through the door. "I passed a man in a black coat," he said, chest heaving. Who was he? Mara froze. Eli saw the packed bundle. He saw the bruise blooming on her cheek. His face went still, dangerously still. "Mara," he said quietly, "who hit you?" Quote. She couldn't hold the truth back any longer. "It was Jonas," she cried, the words ripping out of her. "He found me. He says I owe him. He says I belong to him. He has men. He'll kill you." Eli stepped closer, gripping her wrist gently but firmly. "You think I'm letting you walk out that door alone?" he said, voice shaking. "You think I'm letting that man take you back to the hell you ran from?" Her voice broke. "I'm not worth you getting killed for, Eli. I'm nothing but—" "No," he snapped. He cupped her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are not nothing. You are not what he made you believe. You are stronger than you think. You are worth more than any life I've lived up to now." Tears blurred Mara's vision. "You mean everything to me," he said softly. And for the first time in her life, Mara believed someone meant it. They rode into Two Creeks together. The town fell silent when they entered. The saloon doors creaked open as they stepped inside. Jonas stood near the back, brandy in hand, smirk on his face. "So," he said, "my runaway finally comes crawling back." Eli stepped in front of Mara, blocking Jonas's view of her. "We're here for the judge," Eli said, voice strong and steady. "You don't take her anywhere." Jonas pulled out a folded contract, waving it like a victory flag, signed by her, stating she owes me a debt. Marshal Cobb examined the paper, scratching his chin. "That signature looks shaky," he said. "Could be real. Could be forced." Jonas leaned in. She admitted she signed it. All eyes turned to Mara. Her hands trembled. Shame clawed up her throat. For a moment, she felt herself slipping into the old fear. But Eli's hand found the small of her back. Steady, warm, anchoring her. Mara stepped forward. "He is lying," she said, voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "He beat me. He trapped me. He made me sign whatever he wanted. That contract is not a debt. It's a chain." A murmur rippled through the room. Jonas's smile faltered. Marshal Cobb crossed his arms. "I'm not dragging a woman off on a maybe," he said. "Judge Holloway will sort it out in 3 weeks. Jonas's face twisted in fury. "You'll regret this, Marshal." Eli led Mara out of the saloon. As they mounted their horses, Jonas shouted after them, "You have 3 weeks, Turner. When the judge sees that contract, she comes back to me." They rode home through a rising storm. Rain pelted the earth, lightning cracking across the sky. When they stumbled into the cabin, soaked and shaking, Mara broke. "What if the judge believes him?" she cried. "What if I can't outrun my past?" Eli grabbed her shoulders gently but firmly. "You aren't running anymore," he said. "You stand and fight. And you don't do it alone." He rested his forehead against hers. "I'm here. I'm not letting go." Mara closed her eyes, absorbing the warmth of his words. She wasn't used to being held, or believed in, or chosen. But Eli's voice was steady. "You're worth fighting for," he whispered. Her heart broke open, soft and trembling. For once, her past felt smaller than her future. But danger was only sleeping. And when it woke, the plains would burn.